The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts Alison and Debi Vandenboom.
Today's topic, hormones, fertility, and microplastics. We have a special guest, Dr. Loreena Ryder, a naturopathic doctor and Debi's doctor, not to mention. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited about today.
Yes. So we have so many questions for you. I want to start off with just a little bit about your background. How long have you been a naturopathic doctor, and what types of things did you study in school that maybe a normal doctor wouldn't?
So approximately 5 years, including my training time, student time, and I don't know if we count. I'm just not counting COVID time.
Yeah,
COVID broke time. So, yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yes. So as far as what I learned in medical school that a conventional doctor does not learn. Now we do an accredited 4-year program. We have to pass boards just the same as conventional doctors. What is different is less of a concentration on prescription medicine, prescribing, learning the drugs and that type of thing, and more of a concentration on plants, natural therapies, alternative therapies such as acupuncture, physical manipulations like chiropractic manipulations, and just basically finding the source of the issue rather than putting a Band-Aid on it and prescribing a medication to cover up the issue.
That's so interesting. So you take more of a holistic approach to, and it's interesting when you think about your body, everything is connected. You don't always think about that, but it's like when your knee hurts, there's usually something wrong with your hip or your back, right? Mm-hmm. And so I love that, like finding the source.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're looking at it biblically, right? I mean, just like how the earth is designed to work in connection with it, all the systems of the earth are designed to work together. Our bodies are designed to function properly, right? If they're healthy, they are functioning properly. And so if something is not functioning properly, there's a reason, and we need to get the body back into alignment. I did want to add one little, I forgot to remind you, we talked about this earlier, but I do want to say that in this whole conversation, we are not trying to tell you to ignore your doctor's advice and get off medications if you have a serious health issue. What we are trying to do in this conversation is to empower you to maybe ask some different questions, to look into some information. If you are not healthy and you're not getting well, that there may be some alternative ways to do that. And to just, we want you to be empowered and informed and to start taking control of your own health. But we're not recommending you do anything risky, right? To just stop some kind of heart medication that you're on. And, that's not ever a wise thing to do. Because even if you want to get off medications, if that's what you want, there are ways to do that need to be supported with other things. So we're not advocating for any of that. Right. We're just wanting to empower and inform and get you to start thinking of things in a different way.
Right. And I think something you said was really key is that it's important to ask questions. I remember one of my first visits to the doctor as a teenager, I was probably 14 or 15, and they bombarded me with, oh, you should get on birth control, and oh, you should take this, oh, you have acne, you should take this medication. And I remember for acne, it was the antibiotics. They said you should get on antibiotics for your acne and that'll help clear it up. And I remember at that time I wasn't into health, and I was like, well, I mean, I don't know, is that maybe it'll help? But looking back on that, it's like, what is our current medical system, about? And one thing that I do know is that they have a quota for medications that they have to meet. And so what is your perspective on this? Like the current medical system, what are you seeing right now?
When it comes to acne in teenagers, it's a huge problem. So when I approach something like that, I take a look at the whole picture like we talked about before. So one other difference of what we're taught in medical school is we look at spiritual, emotional, and the physical body because we are all one piece. And some of those other things have to do with what's going on currently.
Right.
As far as the acne picture, I would take a look at what foods are you eating? What environmental toxins might we need to detox out of your system? How's your liver working? Let's take some blood work. So, I mean, eventually you may have a patient here and there that really does need the antibiotics or needs something to kill whatever bacteria is causing the acne.
Right.
But that is definitely not our first line. And we do not have a specific gold standard in the box protocol that every single naturopathic doctor follows. We investigate and see what's going on, and it's approached differently with each person.
Right.
Yeah, and so not with acne, but I'll just make an anecdotal reference here. So we had the reason that I met Dr. Ryder was because my youngest daughter was having all these health issues. She kept passing out, and we could not figure out what was wrong with her. I mean, and we spent a year of her missing school, of missing out on things, and no one could give us an answer. We went to a cardiologist, a neurologist, all these specialists, had all kinds of things. She had MRIs and CAT scans and, EEGs and all, you name it, she had it right in that year. And we never got an answer. They were like, there's nothing wrong with her. And okay, she's passing out and she can't get out of bed and she's missing school and she's 17. Like there is something wrong with her. There's something wrong. And so I was recommended by someone else from Dream City, actually. So this naturopathic doctors group, and got connected. And it was amazing the difference that happened really quickly, actually, where it was like, okay, looking at the whole picture and finding what was going on. And it was such a huge blessing for us. So then all of us started going in and saying, okay, help, let's get this corrected and figure out things. But I mean, I spent a year, and literally like on the insurance bill, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff going on that the insurance paid for most of it. And we never got one single answer at all. Like no one could figure out what was going on. So I do think there is value in looking, I just kept pushing and kept trying to find answers and knew something was wrong and knew that this wasn't right. And I think that's where, a lot of times, because if you're just dealing with one system, right? So a cardiologist is just dealing with the heart. Well, if there's something else going on, they don't think to look at the entire body or how food allergies or how, whatever the case is. There's different things that are going on. But looking at the whole system to see what's happening. So I know that for me personally, it was very helpful, very effective, and made a big difference without a bunch of medication or surgery or all these crazy interventions that are not necessary.
I don't think it took very long for her
it did
either.
Not.
What, 3 to 6 months?
Really quickly, yeah. She started feeling better very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's been a year. So it's been over a year that she's
amazing.
Not passed out at all. And she was passing out like regularly. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah. That's insane. And I think there really is with the medical system as a whole, there's a learned helplessness of, I don't feel good, I'm going to do whatever my doctor tells me to do, right? So if it's medication, if it's this, if it's that, there's a lot of people that don't ask questions like, what are my other options, or how else could I fix this? Could I change the way I eat? Could I change what I'm doing? The things that I do control.
Or even just thinking through if what they're telling you makes sense.
Right.
Because we know our own bodies. I mean, I think we know our own bodies.
We've lost touch of that though. Like people, like as you know what I mean, especially when you're younger, like it's like you don't know that until somebody tells you that. Sometimes you're just like, I mean, yeah, like I should, but it's like when it comes to health, you kind of like freak out when something's wrong with you. You're like, what do I do? Yeah. But it's completely true. So I want to get into some specific things because this is really interesting to me. So what role do hormones play in your health?
Basically everything.
Everything, pretty much.
So if you look
in
at
the
in a nutshell.
If you look at the definition of hormones, they're messengers. So when people say hormones, they think things like puberty, menopause, craziness, and yes, those are a factor, but hormones are really just messengers. And with the earth and plastic and gas fumes and pollution, it is definitely affecting our hormones because our receptors are getting clogged with dirty environment. So when it comes to hormones, our messages aren't getting sent or received as easily as they used to be. So if you've noticed that things seem to be a little awry when it comes to adolescence and children either growing up and getting like breast buds earlier or getting their menstrual cycle earlier or infertility is on the rise, it all has to do with environment, food, and hormones.
That's so interesting. That is a big thing that I've seen is infertility, as far as like, I have so many friends who really struggle having children. And I'm like, okay, this, not that it's never been an issue, but I don't remember it being this big of an issue 10 years ago, you know? And so something interesting to me as you were talking, so you're talking about environment, gases, oils, things like that. How does that get into our system?
Well, either by breathing, number one, by eating it or drinking it. So if we are one earth, right? And we recycle everything.
Right.
So the plastic bottle that we drink out of, yes, it may get recycled, but guess what happens? Those fumes go up in the air. It rains, it comes down, it goes into our water, into our soil. Then our plants are grown in that soil. So we are one big ecosystem. And the fact that we're producing plastics, that doesn't go away. Plastics take millions of years to degrade. So that's one of the problems. We have microplastics. Okay. Then the gasoline that the cars use and it comes out of their exhaust. We breathe that. Same thing. It goes up in the air. It rains. It comes down. You know, it's that ecosystem. Just like back in the 1960s, 70s, whenever leaded fuel was a big thing. We didn't find out that was bad until maybe the 80s. And they said, no more lead, that's bad. No more lead pipes, no more lead paint. So now, and anyone that's over 40 likely has high lead, and we're detoxing those people. So think about like now with all of the plastics that we're producing, I suspect there's going to be a problem in the future where the generations will realize, hey, plastic's a problem. We need to detox and we need to get rid of this.
Didn't you say something about that testing amniotic fluid and finding microplastics?
Absolutely, yes. Research articles, several of them. And this is new research because microplastics is something that's new. But yes, in 2023, I believe, there was a test that pulled some amniotic fluid from a mother's womb. Amniotic fluid is where the fetus floats around and grows in. And there were over 100 different toxins, chemicals, and microplastics in that fluid.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. And I mean, we learn things over time, right? I mean,
right.
Like you even talk about like ancient kings and like that would go crazy because they put lead paint makeup on their face and then it caused them to go crazy. So some of the kings of England and queens of England that have reputations for being kind of psycho, that was because they were putting lead makeup on their lead-based makeup on their face. And so, but at the time you don't know that. And then it's something you learn later. Sure. With asbestos and lead and all these different things that we were poisoning ourselves with.
Right.
And, you know, I remember all the schools had to get rid of all the asbestos in the different schools when I was a kid. So in the 70s. And that was a thing because they put it all in every school and every building and not realizing that it was poisonous and causing cancer. So, you know, you learn as you go things that
are,
yeah.
That's kind of crazy. So, okay. So if somebody is listening to this right now and they're like, I want my hormones to be balanced naturally, like what are some things you would recommend to stay away from that would disrupt their hormones?
Well, first and foremost, I would recommend a blood test because there's so many different variables with hormones that I would need to know, well, are they actually balanced? Like, right. Is there even an issue? Because before we start doing something that we don't know we're doing is proper, we might disrupt something else. So first and foremost, we need to get a baseline and we need to see where things are at. And then depending on what is high or low, then we would do things like eat different seeds at different times. So there's a thing called seed cycling for female fertility and menstrual cycle. Depending on if there's a young man and he's low in testosterone, there's certain supplements that you can take. There's certain foods that you can eat to build testosterone. There's, strength building exercises. So it really, you can do things naturally like that, right. Or there are maybe some person needs a bioidentical hormone cream. Now, you don't have to go conventional if you need actual hormones. And some people do, even to give a little bit to their body so their body recognizes, oh, that's what this looks like, and it will kickstart that production back in. But I would do a bioidentical hormone, which is a cream made at a compounding pharmacy rather than conventional, because conventional uses horse urine to make their hormones. So most people, including the birth control pill, so most people don't like that.
That's insane. So some things that I know that helped, because I had this whole thing getting off birth control and trying to figure out, okay, what's not good for me. The lotions and the sprays, Bath and Body Works. I will never go back.
Good. Please don't.
And I tell all of my athletes, stop spraying Bath and Body Works all over yourself, all over your knee pads, like masking the smell that you have. You're sweating out toxins and then you're spraying toxins on your body. And there's no way that can be good for you. But speaking of the creams, what actually got me to understand all of this is I remember somebody said, oh, you should try like a cream for progesterone. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, wait a second. So if I put this on my skin, it's going to absorb into my bloodstream. And it clicked. I was like, oh my God, whatever I put on my skin absorbs into my bloodstream. And that was like, whoa, hold on a second. What's going on my skin? And so that kind of triggered what I spray, what you lotion, like all these different things, and how all of those chemicals, which you would think all these things should have ingredients lists. Like, you know what I mean? They should have a list of what's in it. But it was crazy to me how much that impacted everything else.
Yes, those are considered neurotoxins. So neuro is brain, so they actually do affect the brain chemistry. A lot of people will get headaches, or they'll be sensitive even just walking past a Bath and Body Works store, any perfume store. There are chemicals and toxins in those fragrances. If you want to smell good, just get some essential oils and wipe it on you. I mean, there's ways.
Yeah.
I know that after I detoxed from stuff, the smell of a candle would give me a headache instantly. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't be around it because it would just give me an instant headache.
Right.
Because it's like your body gets off of that. You kind of, it's like a drug. You can clean from it, and then it's it gets you're exposed to it, and it just really has an effect on you. Yeah.
And so when it comes to hormones, can you talk about how, I mean, I'm sure men deal with this too, hormonal imbalances and things like that, but it is never talked about anywhere as far as men's health goes.
Right. So men do have it easier than women. I will say that first and foremost, because women have hormone fluctuation every single month. Mm-hmm. We have 2 weeks of high estrogen, then we ovulate, and then we have 2 weeks of high progesterone, and it flip-flops back and forth every single month for us. So we do have a little bit more to manage. But when it comes to men, what has been happening and what I've seen in practice is the younger men seem to have lower and lower testosterone. And it's the same reason why hormones are messed up for women is because of the toxins sitting on the receptors and estrogen being higher in men, which also decreases the testosterone. And there are many things in our environment now that are estrogenic, which means they produce more estrogen in our body, plastic being the number one, because the chemical structure of estrogen looks very much like plastic. And then when we have those microplastics in our bodies, it works the same way. So with men, what we have to do is we have to detox all of the toxins out of their body. We have to give them lifestyle changes like try not to eat food out of plastic containers. Don't microwave. Get rid of any plastic that you have at home, because if it goes through the dishwasher just one time and you eat off of it, you will get those chemicals and those toxins in your body. Put your leftovers in glass containers. Eat out or drink out of a stainless steel or a glass water bottle. Get rid of the plastic water bottles. No BPA. Make sure you're reading that label. And then we have to also work on ways to get the testosterone up naturally.
Right.
And how much of an effect does hormones in food? So like any kind of animal products are giving hormones to chickens, and so it's in eggs and it's in milk and it's in meat and things like that. I'd heard a long time ago, this is why children were going through puberty at younger and younger ages was one of the factors, that there's so much hormone, there are so many hormones that we're consuming in food because they're trying to produce more eggs or more milk or more whatever, and they're giving animals these hormones.
It's absolutely 100% true. And then also, whenever you think about what I said is we're one ecosystem, Nothing really leaves our environment. So when you have a female who's taken a birth control pill, she's urinating out that hormone and it's going through our sewage system. And then that water gets replenished and cleaned up so that we can drink it, right? And there are things that are put in that water, chlorine, fluoride, all the different things to kill the stuff. Guess what? It doesn't filter out hormones. It doesn't filter out those birth control. It doesn't filter out
abortion pill drugs. That's another one that they're finding in water.
Prescription medications, like heavy prescription medications. So if you take your drugs and you flush them down the toilet, or you give them to, a facility that is supposed to discard them properly, they are still in our ecosystem. So food is one, wastewater that is turned into drinking water is one, and then all of the plastics that are being produced, all of that. So yes, hormones injected into animals, we eat the flesh of that animal. It only makes sense that we would be then ingesting the hormone grown meat.
Right. That's insane. I didn't think about that. Okay, the question has to follow. How do we clean up our water? How do we make sure we're not drinking that? Because if it's found, I actually got a whole house system filter. So I don't obviously know if it covers all of those things, but it takes out the chlorine. It takes out the stuff that shouldn't be in the water for the shower, the sink, everything in the house and outside of the house. So I've noticed a big difference with just like my skin and like when I'm in the shower, especially when it's heated too, right? If you have water that's heated, it goes directly into your skin. So, but yeah, what other ways can people make sure they have good water?
Yeah, because we don't want to promote fear either. There's only so much you have to. I think I'll let Dr. Ryder answer this, but I would say just in general, just start with something. Like we can't get paralyzed by fear and think, because yes, we are, there are a lot of toxins and a lot of poisons, but just start somewhere, start researching. You can go crazy with this, right? Mentally, just like push your mind over this. But just start trying to take as much in control as you can. What my recommendation would be, and just start with something and start researching, okay, how do I feel? How dirty do I think my water is? Whatever it is that you think, because you can't do everything all at once, especially you have to start somewhere.
Right.
And just start looking things up and researching and taking control of as much as you can take control of to be healthier. Some of those things are really easy, right? Like the stainless steel and the glass, and those things are easy. Finding the non-toxic lotions and whatever, they're all listed now. If they don't have parabens or PBA or whatever those things are in there, they're not that hard to find. And they're really not as expensive anymore as they used to be for the most part. Food is a little bit harder, I think, to get clean food. But yeah, I'll let you answer the... Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have Phoenix tap water, it needs to be filtered.
Yeah.
100%. I tested my tap water at home one time, and it had more chlorine in it than my pool.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, everything's getting a filter. So some filter is better than no filter.
Yeah.
It can be charcoal. It can be whatever. That's a whole other podcast when it comes to water. Even in your showers, you think about you're standing in the shower. It's hot, like you said. Where's that hitting most of the time? Right at your neck and shoulders. What's located there? Well, your thyroid's there. That's huge. And chlorine and thyroid is not a good thing. So shower filters, that's one way. Any water you're drinking, be very particular about that. Remember I said no BPA, all of that. If you can filter water at home, put it in stainless steel, that's where you go with that. As far as food, organic is better than non-organic, but even the organic food has a certain amount of pesticides because, like I said, we're all in one ecosystem. One fence that separates an organic to a non-organic field doesn't mean there isn't leaching of pesticides to the other field. So there are a small amount of pesticides found in not organic foods. So my suggestion is support your local farmers markets.
Yeah.
Local food is best. They seem to really care about the animals that they're taking care of, so your meat is local, and also the food that they're growing, the vegetables and produce. Other than that,
what about detoxing occasionally too?
Mm-hmm.
So what kinds of things can you do to sort of detox your system from some of those?
So your 3 detoxing mechanisms are elimination, so that's urination and going number 2, so bowel movements. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you're drinking plenty of water and urinating, and making sure having at least one healthy stool per day is normal. You really should have more than that. But if you're not going number 2 at least once a day, you're not eliminating your toxins. Sweating. So that's another elimination. So you got to make sure you're, sweating, either exercising, sauna, something. Just sitting at home being stagnant is not detoxing you. And sleeping. Sleeping is another detox mechanism. So good quality sleep is where your body regenerates the cells and rebuilds anything that's broken down and needs to fix itself.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a very good practical thing. So let's talk about people who are currently on medication, or their doctor wants them to get on medication, right? And I have people constantly calling me about this, because when I have an issue, I will look it up and try to figure it out myself first, right? If I have a stomach ache or a headache, or, I'll figure out, okay, if it's on this side, it could be allergies, or could be. So it's interesting because I've developed that where I want to try to figure it out myself and see if it's something that I can handle before I go to a doctor or go to medication, even if it's something persisting. But a lot of people will get something and they'll go right to the doctor and say, okay, what do I do, right? And so, but with that, those people want to either get off medication, or they're like, I really don't want to be on something that can cause other health issues. What would you recommend as a first step for those people? And it's kind of what we're already talking about, is doing these simple things. But what would you recommend to those people? Can they talk to their primary doctor about that?
Well, they certainly can. Their primary doctor, it depends on the personality and the training of the primary doctor.
Right.
They may insist on the medication, or they may be open to giving you some time to clean up your diet and lifestyle and see if that number changes in 6 months. I always recommend a second opinion. If you want to go to a different conventional doctor, at least you have 2 opinions. I think a naturopathic doctor should be involved in everyone's care so that it gives that alternative perspective as well. I'll have patients come in and say, my cholesterol was high, my doctor wants me on a statin, what do you have to say? I'll take a look at it. I'll typically give them some time to change their diet and lifestyle. If it doesn't change, and I see that it's a dangerous number, I will also recommend a medication. But it really depends. And honestly, we're very much in control of our own health and where our numbers are. And it just depends on our willpower and how much we're willing to put in. To be honest, some people don't want to change their lifestyle or their diet, and they will take the medication.
Well, and in those cases, sometimes it's better. If you're talking about something like blood pressure or whatever, you can have a stroke. If you're not willing to change your lifestyle, it's better to be on a medication than to have a stroke. Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it really does. I think that is a big factor of it. If you're willing to do like what you've done and what I've done and what we've done with my daughter, of trying to make those changes in health and lifestyle so that we don't have to be on things. Right. I know I was able to get off of a lot of asthma medication from just taking better care of my health.
Well, and kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, your body is not meant to be sick and breaking down and, constantly having severe issues. And of course that, there's tons of variations to that, right? Depending on how people live and what they do for work and all of that stuff. But there's a really, I think, negative connotation on health in society where it's like, literally the second you turn 30, they're like, oh, it's going downhill from here. You're going to start having, like, people tell me that all the time. I'm like, whoa, back up. That's you. It's not me. And it's like, oh, you'll see when you're 40, you'll see when you're 50. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have to see. But it's like, I don't want to think that way. Cause I'm like, if I'm taking care of myself and doing what I'm supposed to do, I am going to be healthy. Does that mean you never have any issues? Of course not. But like, I think that there's a negative push on that. And it's the same thing with people when they get older. It's like people assume the first thing people ask when someone passes away, what did they die of? Not how old were they? Not what did they die of? Because it's always a sickness. It's always an illness. It's always something that is so severe. And I think to myself, I'm like, I don't think we should be dying of sicknesses and having 17 diseases. Like, I know it happened. I mean, I've had tons of family members that have, and it's terrible. But at the same time, I'm like, it shouldn't be this way,
Yeah, that's the longevity podcast that's going to be in the future that we're going to talk about.
Yes. Literally.
But you're on the right track. You're absolutely right. As long as you take care of things now, and there is only so much you can do according to the earth we live on, our genetics.
Any genetic predispositions or whatever. Yeah,
yes,
those
but
things.
you can absolutely extend your life, and you can extend your quality of life.
Right.
Yes, and the expected age is actually increasing, right? That's why they were concerned about toppling Medicare and all of that. It is increasing, but if we can increase the quality of our life, then we're more excited to live longer. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't want to live that long. That sounds miserable." No, you can live a quality life and live longer.
Right, because if you're living longer but you're sicker,
Right.
then and you're on 15 medications, right? But it is a quality of life issue. It's
Right.
not just about living longer, but being thriving.
Right. And I've been listening to different podcasts about this from neurosurgeons and brain doctors and different people, that how do you get your brain to extend longer, right, when you're older? And they talk a lot about like racket sports, like pickleball and tennis and all these different things. And if you can walk more faster than 3 miles per hour when you're 80 years old, it's like this insanely high percentage that you're going to live past 90. And so it is tied to what are you spending your time doing every day? Do you put time into detoxing, into moving, into that type of stuff? Because a lot of people don't. So it's
Absolutely. One of the tricks is if it's a test to see like how healthy you are. If you can get down into the caveman squat, where your feet are flat on the ground, your knees are bent, your bum is like as far low as you can possibly get it, and if you can stand straight up from that squat without any move, like help touching anything, you're good. You're healthy.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I cannot do that. I can tell you right now without trying.
You're like, oh, okay, hold on a second.
I'll work on it.
I'll work on that. I'll work on that. So I want to say like maybe one more thing like that is an easy start for somebody who is not healthy, who is not on the right path with their health. And I want to get both of you to say what your thought is. So like when I was first starting on all of this health thing, the first thing that I incorporated was having fruit every single morning. I was like, okay, if I can at least get in fiber, get in stuff. And I started thinking of food as, they say think of food as fuel, but it's like when I would think about fruits, I would look up what vitamins are in an apple, what vitamins are in blueberries and blackberries. And so as you're reading it, you start to change your mind about like, oh, this is why this is good for me. So every time I would eat something or every time I do something for health that I don't feel like doing, I will literally go back and look it up and say, what vitamins are in this? Why are blueberries good for you, right? And it just like triggers that response of, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it. And I never have a problem with that habit because I reinforce why I'm doing it in the first place. So that would be my advice to anybody is like, this is how you start becoming healthier, is by being mindful of like what I'm eating. And when you want to try to eat something good, think about what's in it that is helping you and that's good for you.
Well, I can't narrow it. Can I say two things?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing, at least drink half of your body weight in ounces of water.
Okay.
So if you're overweight, count like your ideal body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, ideally, you would be drinking 75 ounces of water per day minimum. That's huge for people. Most people are dehydrated. The other thing is when you think about our biology, when we were evolving and learning how to like hunt food and gather food. So we were hunters and gatherers. Anything that could walk, swim, or fly, and we could kill it and cook it on the fire, that's what we did. If we could farm it and raise it out of the ground or off of a tree or off of a bush and eat it, that's what we're biologically designed to eat. Going into a grocery store and picking up a box of processed crackers or pasta.
Right.
So we did not have factories back then to do that. And it's not biologically, it's just not nutrient dense and it's not made for us. So if you think about whole foods like that, that's what I suggest.
Close to the original as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that.
And I would say for me, I mean, I think everybody's different too in the types of foods that they need and that their body kind of thrives on. Some people need, more depending on your age and your sex and, whatever. your health issues and food allergies and all those things. Like some people need more fat, or they need more protein, or they need more whatever. So you kind of have to play around with it a little bit and figure out when you feel the best of what you're eating.
Right.
But I also, for my own mental, what I started focusing on is what you were saying about what I'm putting in. So rather than saying, oh, I'm not going to eat this and I'm not going to eat that, I'm going to deprive myself of these things. If I was focusing on putting good nutrition into my body, then I didn't want that other stuff. So like you're craving those things because your body is lacking something.
Right.
I mean, some of it's habit, and some of it's just like habit and, mental, grabbing the chips or whatever.
Right.
The Twinkies or whatever your vice is. But the more you put healthy food into your body, the less your body is craving all the garbage.
Right.
Is what I have found in my,
Yeah. I was just going to say, on the opposite end, it's the same thing as what I did when I was, I wanted to eat ramen and all of this stuff that was terrible for me. I started looking up, what does this ingredient mean? What does it do to your body? And then I would see, as I'm typing it into Google, it would say side effects of, this ingredient. I was like, what do you mean side effects? And so I click on it, does the same exact thing to you. It's like, oh my gosh, it has this in it. It has rat poison. It's addictive to your brain. And when you start to learn the things that you're eating that are bad for you and why they're bad, you will also be like, oh, I don't know if I want that right now. You know what I mean?
reading
so
ingredients is huge. Like to make sure you can pronounce everything that's on there and you know what it is, right? If you don't know what that thing is, then it's probably not good for you.
Yeah.
But it's just start looking at that and asking questions, and as well as like some of the medications we were talking. I want to make sure we say this too, because we had talked about this earlier, and I want to make sure we say this as well. But like, there are certain types of drugs that it just seem to be the go-to that people prescribe for ADHD. They want to put kids on Ritalin or whatever, and like they want to put every girl on birth control pills and put everybody on an antidepressant. There's a few categories and types of drugs that like everybody is on because they think it's a fix-all of everything. And so if we're looking at these things of water and health and sleep and those kind of things, do I really need those drugs, or is it just masking whatever else is going on in, are there cases where people need drugs? Yes, right? Those are things that you have to, but that should never be the first go-to. It should be, in my opinion. I mean, obviously I'm not a medical doctor, but I think that Dr. Ryder said something very similar to that, but that should not be the first go-to, right? It's trying to take control of your own health so that you feel better, and then you need fewer of those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, I have several patients who come in, and I will tell them, we can do these things, we can try to fix these things. Most of the time, my route of fixing things is the long route, and it does take discipline, takes time, and it takes patient compliance. Sometimes patients just aren't willing to wait, and they go and they'll get on the drugs, and then they'll typically come back and they'll say, you warned me, I'm on the drugs, I'm having a hard time getting off, but I want to because I feel like dirt.
Right.
So then
it creates 12 other things that are going on that you need other drugs for.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's rough with children when you have the ADD, ADHD children, and the parents are at their wits' end, and they're told by the doctors that this is the only thing available to them.
Right.
Occasionally I'll get a parent bring their child in and say, I just want to check that there, this is really the only thing they can do for them. Absolutely, it's not, and we'll do things naturally. And most people don't understand that medications, if they're given to a child and their brain is still developing, it actually changes the structure of their brain as they're growing. So Keep that in mind. Medications under the age of 23 can change the brain structure.
And so this is true, again, with like birth control and with antidepressants and all of those things, right? That you have to be really careful.
Absolutely.
Of all of those things, not having, ask questions. Again, not saying don't do them. You need to make your own decisions and what's best for you and your family. But to start asking questions and looking up side effects and long-term effects of those things and what other ways are there to maybe get healthier and not need those things.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
eliminate those other symptoms,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that. This is such a great conversation. And Dr. Ryder, thank you so much for your information. I mean, this is really good for people to start thinking about those basic things, thinking about the questions that they can ask rather than just following blindly, about whatever they hear. So it's been a great episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Dr. Ryder. And thanks for listening to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
Thank you.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media. Find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.